In Rudolf Steiner's original, The Philosophy of Freedom, Chapter 1 was The Goal of Knowledge. In 1918, this chapter was moved to the back of the book and replaced with a new preface written by Steiner. The original first paragraphs of The Goal of Knowledge were completely deleted. My theory is that they were removed because they sounded too anarchistic. In 1898, shortly after writing The Philosophy of Freedom, Steiner publicly declared himself an individualist anarchist. Steiner found an audience for The Philosophy of Freedom in the growing individualist anarchist movement of the time. The rise of the violent Marxist anarchist ruined the reputation of the peaceful anarchist, causing Steiner to believe he may be in danger. This dramatically changed the course of his life. Just 2 years after declaring himself an individualist anarchist, Steiner finds himself giving lectures to a new audience of theosophists. The Philosophy of Freedom went out of print. In 1918, over 20 years later, Steiner decided to republish the book, but deleted the opening part, which was a very bold declaration for radical individualism. I view this opening part as a strong expression of courage. Opening the Philosophy of Freedom with a bold expression of courageous radical individualism is an appropriate beginning for the Philosophy of Freedom and for the path to ethical individualism. Without courage, a person will not grow toward ethical individualism. It takes courage to leave behind the groupthink and group conformity of the collective and begin expressing your own views. We see a lack of courage all around us today in the current cultural upheaval. The good news is that courage can be developed, just like anything else, by taking one courageous step at a time. I am creating a cartoon summary for the Philosophy of Freedom courses being offered at philosophyofreedom.org. Here are 12 points for the cultivation of an individual life summarized from the opening of the original Philosophy of Freedom. Each is a step in courage. We begin with the courage to resist authority and conclude with the courage to creatively express our unique individuality. Make a vigorous effort to shake off every kind of authority. Here are a few examples of where it takes courage to take back authority in your life. Accept nothing as valid unless it springs from the source of individuality. It takes courage to not rely on outside sources to validate knowledge. Here are some outside sources that validate knowledge. Push away everything that prevents you from fully developing your potential. It takes courage to remove distractions to self-development, such as these. Don't follow a leader. Blaze your own trail up the mountain. It takes courage to not follow the path of a spiritual leader. Do not allow any ideals to be forced on you. It takes courage to not turn ethical systems into commands. Now we turn from the courage to resist authority to the courage to creatively express your unique individuality. I am convinced that at the core of your being there is something noble, something worth developing. Do not believe that you must conform to any norm of life. The perfection of the whole depends on the unique perfection of each single individual. It is not the duty of the individual to perfect the collective. It is to perfect each individual within the group. Don't do what anyone else can do just as well. Contribute something you alone can offer due to the uniqueness of your nature. Ignore the rules and norms. Assert your right to creatively express what is unique in you. What these views are all saying is that you should intensely strive for freedom. At this point, radical individualism is recognized as the intense striving for freedom, which is the theme of Steiner's philosophy of freedom. Do not be dependent in any way. If you must be dependent, tolerate it only if it fits in with a vital individual interest. Increasing individual freedom can't be separated from taking more responsibility for your life by becoming less dependent on others. Anyone who advocates for becoming more dependent on society, government, or groups is calling for the removal of freedom and the removal of individual responsibility.